Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Do Good to Lead Well podcast series. I'm your host, Craig Dowden, and I'm thrilled that you've taken the time out of your schedules today to join us for what's sure to be a really lively, enriching conversation around leadership and building positive teams, cultures, and organizations. And as I always do, I love to provide a little bit of a backstory at the front end. So for those of you who are new to the Do Good to Lead Well universe, a very warm welcome. Thrilled that you're able to join us. For those of you who are return watchers or listeners, because as you know, we go live with a live studio audience, and then we release the podcast episode later. Thanks so much for your ongoing support. This podcast really came about in advance of the publication of my first book, Do Good to Lead Well. And I have the profound privilege in the work that I do as an executive coach and keynote speaker on positive leadership to speak with best-selling authors, TED speakers, award-winning CEOs like Vera today. And because of your ongoing support, your social shares, your comments, your feedback, topics you want us to dig into as a community, the Do Good to Lead Well podcast is now ranked in the top 0.5% of all podcasts globally. So thank you so much, a heartfelt expression of gratitude. And the reason why that we have received such interest and a lot of energy is because of the amazing guests. And today is no exception. I've been really excited as soon as Vera signed on for this opportunity. I was like, this is going to be so much fun for a bunch of reasons. She's been with Cydcor for over 25 years, and she's been a driving force behind the company's growth. Now, what's really interesting, and I can't wait to dive into this, is that she's really a testament to the entrepreneurial spirit, because she's gone from knocking on doors to the corner office, and she's taken on so many different roles within the organization and has had such an important impact, not just in terms of her own career and on the growth of the organization, but the people within the organization as well. And she took over as CEO, president and CEO in 2020. And before that, she was COO, she was VP of operations, VP of sales operations. What's also really important is that under her leadership, Cydcor has been recognized as a great place to work and profiled for their people first culture. And can't wait to dive into that, because again, with all the data today and the importance placed on building positive cultures, really excited to talk to her about it. She's also been named one of the top 10 influential women leaders of 2024. And another fun fact, she studied political science and history at the University of Toronto, so a fellow Canadian, which is awesome. So, and that's just kind of the top line bio. So we could start our conversation. So Vera, a very warm welcome to you today.
Craig, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
Well, and let's dive right in. And again, as always, for those of you who have been here before, Vera is going to take your questions. So chat and type them into the chat. There's so much focus on leadership these days. And as I mentioned at the outset, your organization has been acknowledged as a great place to work. You've been acknowledged for being an exceptional leader. What do you think are the critical leadership qualities that people need to possess, not only to be successful today and lead successful organizations today, but also into the future?
So leadership, I think, is a culmination of so many qualities. I would start with first, I think, self-awareness. We all have various different strengths and weaknesses, and I need to be, and I've said this about myself to myself a lot, I have to be brutally honest with myself about what I'm great at or good at, and where I can push that to excellence. Where are the places where I'm just not great at? I'm just not. And I'm not saying you don't work on those things, you do, but most of my time, effort, and energy is not spent there. I look at it like, now if I have an Achilles heel as a person, I got to fix the Achilles heel. So if I want to be a great leader and I'm terrible at where my time should go, I have to in some way focus there. I have to, I don't have a choice. But I'm probably never going to be exceptional. and that's
Mm,
okay. So for me, leadership is brutal awareness of yourself. And it just, you don't have to tell other people about it. To me, leadership is integrity. It's integrity to the words that you say to yourself and the commitments you make to yourself. And then that integrity moves towards the commitments you make to your, like your village, like your people, right? That's in a business setting, that's in your family setting, that's in your community setting. I want to tell everybody that leadership is easy. It isn't. So there is resilience. There is the ability to, when things don't go your way, and I guarantee you, if you lead long enough, they are not going to go your way. How do I deal with that mentally? How do I deal with that physically? And then what do I do around that? What are my actions around it? I have to build some toughness, both mental and just in my being, because it's not going to go perfectly well all the time. At Cydcor, we have behaviors we value. So at Cydcor, service is a leadership quality. We serve the field, and then we serve our clients. So that if you're going to be a leader here, service has to be a big piece of it. Development of other people. So if I'm brutally honest with myself on what I'm great at and what I can excel at, I'm brutally honest at the things I'm not so good at, I need to be able to amass people around me that are better than me. Now, sometimes I hire those people. Sometimes I develop those people into whatever their greatness is or their excellence is. So leadership is a big piece of that. Now, if you're going to be a great leader, you got to execute. Your words and what you say you're going to do have to match your actions, and you better be able to get the result. And then I think a big piece of leadership in the future is going to be curiosity and innovation.
wow. Awesome. I've got several comments already going. Wow, I'm glad it's a podcast episode. I'm writing this down. This is really great. There's so much to unpack there. I had a whole wave of questions, and I'm already like, okay, we're going to spend the next hour unpacking this. This is so good. And you've touched on such important points. I love how you talk about, hey, if we've got an Achilles heel, then it's essential for us. It's not where I'm not always going to focus on what are my gaps. If there's something that's really undermining me, and there's so much great research. I love what you're talking about, Vera, because there's so much work around, hey, a fatal flaw in our leadership, we must prioritize that. And I love that example that you provided for our listeners today. And I want to unpack the self-awareness piece with you, because in a world of distraction, I do a lot of coaching work, and it can be so easy to get caught up in that noise. What are some things that, and someone just dropped that in as a question, so we're in simpatico. Thanks, Bruce. What can you do to raise your level of self-awareness? What are some of the strategies you found to be really effective?
So I would say my best strategy has been therapy.
Okay.
Okay, that's my best strategy. There are paradigms that I have that I was raised with. It's an integral part of the way I think because of the way I was raised. Sometimes I can pick those out. A lot of times I need some help. So for me, I'm like the biggest proponent. Therapy helps you figure out in the safest way possible how do I think? How do I feel? Why do I think and feel that way? And do those things serve me? So that's number one. Number two, people, could be, I think we're much better at it today. It could be a stigma around therapy. Maybe I don't have the resources to go to therapy. Maybe I don't have access. Okay, fine. I guarantee you that there are people in your life that know you really well. Okay. And I guarantee you, because people want to help you. I believe that too. Fundamentally, we all want to help other people, and we just do. So fundamentally, if I go to a group of my peers and say to them, I want you to tell me the 3 best things about me, and I want you to tell me the 3 things that I don't see about myself. And I don't ask the question, what do I suck at, or what do I need to improve? No, what don't I see about myself?
Mm.
Okay, I go to my peers. I go to my family. I go to maybe people that I supervise. I go to people up. I will find themes.
Mm.
I will find themes. I'm going to find themes about what people think I'm great at. And I personally, again, my philosophy is I'm going to go hard in the paint, hard on those strengths. How do I get them better? What's my development plan? How do I get better and better every single year? How do I make this skill or mindset more of a strength for me? And then I look at those other things that I hear. I don't know this about myself.
Mm.
How is it positively or negatively impacting me in the way I show up? And then what's the plan around it? And
Mm.
Craig, what I do, I pick one thing.
Right.
I don't pick 10. I don't believe it just sucks to focus on 10 things you suck at.
Yeah.
Right? But if I have a development plan around my strengths, 70% of my time's going there. 30% of my time goes to what I'm not great at because I've gathered this feedback.
Yeah.
And here's another tip when you're gathering feedback, don't argue. Because I've
Right.
done that. Hey, tell me the things I need to work on or the things that, I don't know about myself. And then somebody will give me the feedback and then I argue with them. No, I don't. Well, okay, you're never going to get any more feedback, right? So you got to just take it in, write your notes, get your themes. And then 30% of the time I'm focused on, okay, who's really good at this? Is there
Mm.
a class I can take? Is there a business experience I can jump into? Is there a community experience I can jump into so I can get some experience around this thing that maybe I don't know how to do so well?
Mm.
Gives me
Mm.
access, right? Hey, sometimes you're not very, I don't know what it could be. I'm not very open to new people. Oh, that's interesting. If I'm going to be a leader, I need to get open to new people. How do I go figure out how to do that? What's the experience I need? Who do I need to be around? Is there somebody in my business or in my circle of influence that is really good at that? Maybe they can coach me. So
Mm.
that's how I become more aware. I do a lot of work around journaling. What are my thoughts? What am I thinking? Why am I thinking this way? Where do those thoughts come from? Where do my emotions come from? So I found writing was better than just thinking in my own mind. And again, go read your journal from 6 months ago. You're going to be like, I'm still thinking this way. That's an awareness.
Mm.
And then what am I going to do around it?
Love it. Again, lots of positive comments coming in. Great answer. Love another comment saying, love asking for what am I not seeing about myself. That's a rock star practical takeaway that all of us, because to your point, we can often say, well, what do I suck at? Where do I need to improve? And I love how you're framing it about, well, what is a blind spot? And also those questions about, does it serve me or not serve me? And again, so much great stuff here. And going with one, if we can make a change in one area, like one thing, rather than try to boil the ocean, as they say, so important. I've got so many follow-up questions, which is awesome. Stacy was saying, thank you so much for sharing, being so courageous and sharing about therapy for you as an anchor. Can you share a little bit more about that realization for you? I've been thinking about it, and so I'm so inspired by what you just shared.
No, thanks, Stacy. So I'll tell you how it all came about. I read a book. It's called The Wonder of Boys. I have a son, and my son at that time was 12. And they talk in the book about how a mother should raise a son so that the boy ends up able to healthy attach to another woman. Okay, so I'm reading this book. I was a single parent for a while. I was married, divorced, and then it was my son and I for 7 years. Obviously, we had a very deep connection, maybe too attached. As I'm reading the book, Stacy, I'm reading this book, and the book, it's like I'm reading a different language. I have no idea what they're talking about. I have no idea how to parent this way. I have absolutely, like I can read the words in English. I understand what they mean. But then I think, okay, how do I implement? How do I do this as a parent? And I thought, I don't know how. I didn't see a model of this in my home. And if I don't do this, this child is going to have some issues attaching to his partner. So I thought, okay, I don't know how to do this. It has to be something in me, right? It's not him. He's 12. So let me go get some information about the way I was brought up and the things I saw. And then who could teach me what this looks like when it's healthy or good? And so that was my entrance into therapy. 10 years later, 11 years later now, I mean, I've run the gamut. Parenting, leadership, my own childhood, the voices in my head, the ones that are good for me and the ones that are bad for me. I've dug deep on all things Vera. And that's been in some ways a beautiful journey and in some ways a brutal journey, right? Just like, oh, but I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself. So again, while I appreciate that it's, it is seen as courageous, might have been one of the most self-serving things I've ever done in my life.
Wow. Well, and again, there are so many comments coming in, just so inspirational. Really appreciate your candor. So powerful to think about our own motivations and how we impact others. So much, and so thank you. And I love another thing that I want to highlight, because I think it's so great about how you're approaching this with a growth mindset, right? Like where you kind of go, hey, and this is powerful for everybody listening. It's, so where can I go to get resources? Who can I speak with? Who can shine a light on this? That's so wonderful in terms of the opportunities it opens up and how we can broaden our perspective. I think that's just terrific. More questions coming in, so I make a commitment that I get through as many as I can. So I'm not surprised. Vera, as soon as we started the chat, I was like, I could see this episode just kind of, it's gonna, off it goes. So this is great. Okay. Emmanuel said, leaders often face adversity in challenging situations, including dealing with difficult people and unexpected setbacks. Can you share some strategies or approaches you use to navigate these tough situations and maintain your effectiveness as a leader?
Yeah, I think first thing, Emmanuel, like when you're in it, it's too late. Okay. When I'm in it, it's too late, right? Then it's harder for me to keep my emotions in check, not make them run strong, not react, right? So there are some tools that I learned that help me even before going into anything hard. First, I learned this, it's like a DISC assessment. I learned DISC. And you have the dominant, influential, it's like personality types. I'm a high D, so dominant. My style has pros and cons. So again, I look at awareness. Okay, all right, my style is a talking style. My style is maybe not so much connection. My style is execution. Okay, well, if I go deal with somebody who's more a people feeling person, I have to change, not they change for me. So DISC really helped me. Just, okay, you're a D, you deal with an I. This is what the I needs. This is what the C needs. I can't, my CFO's, he's got C in him. And I talk about just go get it done, go do it. He's like, yo, where are your facts? Okay, I have to change for him. He doesn't change for me. So if every conversation, and I learned this skill when I was in my 20s, right? I learned this practice. If every conversation I go in and say to myself, okay, here's a high I. This is the business. This is the conversation we're having. They're having some trouble with this. I know that emotionally they're not going to be feeling great. How do I show up for them for this coaching conversation? Okay, so that was one. Two, there's this, again, it's a skill. It's a teaching crucial conversations. What physiologically goes on in our bodies when we go into a conversation that's high emotions, Stakes are high and opinions vary. Well, physiologically, the blood leaves our brain and goes to the big muscles in our body, and we go to fight, flight, freeze. I'm going to have a terrible conversation unless I go learn how to reignite. Okay, the blood needs to go back to my brain. I need to write out the conversation. I need to think through how this person's feeling. Where are my triggers? Where are their triggers going to be? And how do we stay open? Also, it taught me the skill. This is getting elevated really quickly. Let's take a break. Because there's nothing wrong in business or in life saying, I'm activated, I'm angry. Anything I say after this is not going to go well. Can we take a 2-minute pause? Most reasonable people that we deal with are going to say, yeah. So it was like, okay, people is a big piece of my business. I need to become an expert on people. Setbacks. Listen, I knocked on doors. So I'll tell you my philosophy. I had to knock on 100 doors a day. And they told me 90 people were going to say no to me with varying degrees of kindness. Okay. 10 people were going to say yes. The mindset I had to develop was hearing no is fine. Just keep going. And that was, I mean, I was in my 20s. So I learned that young. So now when something happens in business, oh, by the way, COVID 2020, I have a face-to-face sales company and it got shut down. It's like, okay, you still have to lead through this. Everything passes, nothing's permanent, which is another big philosophy in setbacks. Nothing is permanent, nothing. Something goes wrong, I got divorced. It's not, I'm remarried happily. Right, so the perspective and that mental kind of like strengthening, but prior to the thing. If I hadn't had that training, if I didn't go through that stuff and COVID happened, I'm not 100% sure how I would have dealt with it.
Right. Oh, well, thank you. And again, great comments coming through. And it's such an important point. And it's interesting. I was going to ask this as a follow-up question. There are more questions that come in on top of those existing. And Linda said, it sounds like you're taking a very empathetic approach to leadership by looking at understanding others. So what are some tips, tricks for people to lead with more empathy? And also, what do you think gets in the way of leaders being more empathetic?
Okay, so a few things. I think, I'm not sure if it's empathy. So I appreciate that, like that comment, and I'll have to think about that. Everything is done with and through people. For most of us.
Yeah.
Right? And I really want to tell you that somebody walks through the door at Cydcor and just the work person comes, but they don't. There's the work person and the home person and the person who's feeling insecure about something. There's the person who might be stressed. There's the person who might have just got engaged and be so happy, like elated, and can't, focus on their work because something magical happened to them. There's the person that, didn't sleep last night because they have a child. Who knows? So in order for me to be an effective leader, I have to stay open enough to understand that person. And if that's empathy, then great. Then so I just try and stay open. Okay, who is this person? How are they feeling right now? How's their work going? Are they winning? Maybe they're in a really challenging project and they're not feeling so confident in themselves. Okay, what's the highest and best use of my time with them? What do they need from me? Because ultimately, then we have to go get something done. But me not honoring those things in them it's not helpful. It's not true.
Right. I love what you're saying. And again, more great comments coming through. And I think what's really resonating both in the comments and then also for me, Vera, is about, because a lot of people, and thank you for being open. Hey, I'm a high D. And then people can envision a high, just kind of go barreling through, if you will. And what I love is that you're saying, hey, we've got things to do. We have things to accomplish, and let's do great things together. And then also you're essential, you've said this right at the outset, it's through people. And I love how you're honoring both sides, because sometimes people can either over index in either of those pieces and going, hey, both of these things are operating in this situation. And I love how you're getting us to reflect on, all right, so who's across the table from us, virtual or otherwise, and where do we want to go with this relationship? It's awesome. I've got another question from an earlier comment.
Okay.
It's just so fun. Yeah, they said, I was really intrigued by, it's Kevin, said, I was really intrigued by how you said, sometimes I hire the expertise from outside to come in, sometimes I develop that expertise where I'm not strong. I'd love to hear your thoughts, if you can, on how do you know when to make that decision?
So sometimes you need a skill, a practical skill, or some sort of discipline that your business doesn't have. And you don't have the time to get a really talented, high potential into that discipline. Okay. I'm a big believer, and mostly probably because of the business I'm in. I'm a big believer that if you have talented people, they can do and learn anything they want to. Okay. But let's say tomorrow I really need to implement AI. By the time I take my really talented people at Cydcor and get them trained up, I'm too late. So that might be a skill and an experience that I need to hire from the outside. But for the most part, I'll give you an example. Our current chief financial officer, Lalo, he started in accounting, CPA background, started in accounting, went to go run the Canada sales business for 10 years, came back as CFO. So we have a big focus on developing our people for big roles at Cydcor. If I look at my leadership team, long tenured leadership team. Long tenured because they started, I don't want to say entry level, but third, fourth, fifth job. And then they're like, this business is growing. What are the skills and tools and mindsets that I need to develop? I'm super into HR and people. Okay, great. Well, then go do the training. We'll invest in you if you want to do the work. And culturally, that helps us. I have a young woman who's sitting right here, and she's filming me while I'm on this, right? Because we'll use some things for social. And Ian is learning film. How do I put together videos? How do I market through movies and pictures? And how do I make people feel something through these videos and images? We didn't hire Ian for that. She just had a passion for it. She's willing to do the work. And then it was, hey, I'm doing this. Will you pay for the equipment? Sure. Hey, I'm going to take some classes. I'm going to use some of my time here. Yeah, well, if Ian's willing to invest in herself that way and learn these skills, why wouldn't we be? So that's how we kind of determine, do I need to hire or do I need to develop? And again, we're thinking about people long term. So today I may need to hire the AI expert. But I have two people sitting here in Cydcor who are really interested. Travis is one of them. He's totally into, okay, well, how do we get Travis in the next 5 years? How do we get him those skills if he's interested in getting them? But I know he's like passionate about it and he's doing his own research. Okay, so we have to invest in Travis. Now, if we bring the expert in, they could partner with Travis. Travis is going to be quicker, right? Cydcor will be quicker, and we develop our people.
Awesome, and got great comments. And again, thank you. Very insightful answer. And what I really appreciate what you're sharing, Vera, is around the thoughtfulness of breaking that down and saying, okay, temporally, so how quickly do we need to upskill here? And then what's that ramp look like versus when we need to? And it's so great because I find as well, a lot of times people will be reactive and almost like, it's yes, no, it's a dichotomous and it's a shutdown versus pause, let's ask ourselves the question and then make a more informed choice, because what it does is allow us to get the support we need in the short term and then also upskill the organization. So as you beautifully put it, like we're so much further ahead when people invest in themselves and we invest in them. I love that. And it talked about earlier how you are leading an award-winning organization. You're recognized as a people-first culture and a great place to work. Can you talk about those components? Like what makes, because you look at the Gallup data as an example, it is not in a good direction, and there's so much disengagement, yet your organization, the people within it, from a development standpoint, I'm sure people listening today can see from what you're modeling here in our conversation, it's inspirational. How do you build that culture within, and how do you also engage other leaders in your organization to spread it out as far as possible? I'd love to hear some of the things you've done.
Look, I think the first thing, and you know, I was going to say our old CEO, but that's, I don't mean it that way. I mean the former CEO, Gary, who's the executive chairman. When the business came down to California from Toronto, we did this exercise, and the people in the business at that time, it was so much smaller. I think at Cydcor, maybe we had 30 people. We went through this exercise where we sat down and defined our values. What do we really stand for? What do we believe in? What are we willing to fight for? What are we willing to hold each other accountable to when we do or don't do those things? And we created our list. And then we defined, what does good look like? Hey, this is what that behavior looks like. I really love this one. Respect and get every brain in the game. Everybody has unique skills and talents in your business, every single human. And I don't care what role they have, you will respect what they say. We don't have to do what they say, but you will respect it because they're a valued member of the team. So how does that practically show up? You're in a meeting and somebody gives you an idea. Well, as a senior leader, I can't say that's a stupid idea. You don't know what you're talking about. That's not the way that value shows up. And what's more interesting, Craig, is somebody will call me out on it. Hey, Vera, that's not a good representation of the behaviors we value. And I've been called out on things. Okay, so I think that's where it starts. Then what happens is you're a brand new person to Cydcor. Now we're 170 people, right? You come and we talk to you about these values. We talk about them, first of all, in the recruiting process. We talk to you about this in the interview process. Now you're in the culture. If you don't like these values, this is going to be awful for you.
Right.
Now, you don't have to be perfect at them, but if it doesn't resonate with you in some way, we have this other value, candid communications. It's not the loudest voice or the person with most power that wins. Right. You have to tell me when you think I'm going down the wrong path, because I will make mistakes. Of course, I'm going to go down the wrong path. I need people around me who are like, hey, what are you doing? But if I have to be right all the time, if I can't take that kind of feedback, I can't be a leader at Cydcor.
Right. Wow.
So then, okay, and then we recognize those values. People get to recognize their peers or different work teams. Oh, we're recognizing for the behavioral value of collaboration. We're recognizing for execution. We recognize for integrity, and we're constantly talking about it. But the most important thing, at least in my mind, is the highest level leaders need to be held accountable when they screw it up, because they will. And when people see that, then they believe, and then you have a culture. Or the opposite happens. The highest level people say this stuff, nobody holds them accountable, they don't actually act that way, and then that's your culture.
Right. Wow. Love it. So powerful. And what I would love to do, because I think this is a masterclass in this really important discussion, because talking about, okay, building a culture where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing. I love the values definition, delineation. What does this look like? Because in my experience, what's fascinating, I'd love to dive deeper with you on this, Vera. You talked about you've been called out, right, on the value side. And so in my experience consulting across lots of different companies, I would say a few things happen. One is the person just blows up, right, and just absolutely shuts it down.
Oh, and by the way, Craig, I have done that.
Yeah, I would love to, because, and then other times they say they want the feedback, yet you can they shut down or they're all quiet. So I would love, so thank you for your honest, what happens? Like, can you break it down for us in terms of how, when someone does call you out, how do you respond? How are you able to kind of stay in that space? Or if you did act out, I'd love to. So, what did you do afterwards? How did the values impact how you followed up? Or I'd love to dig deep into that, because people talk about it, and then it's almost, when you're in the moment, it's a whole different game. And I love how you deconstruct things, and I think people get a lot out of hearing your inner voice on this.
So I have a great chief revenue officer. His name is Rich, and he's probably the master caller outer, master, because he does it. He's laughing, kind of joking around. Oh yeah, that's really open. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely candid communications, and he's laughing. I'm like, now sometimes, it gets you. And you're like, oh, and it gets you for different reasons. Oh, I should be better than this. Oh, why did I react that way? Man, I don't want to show up that way. I get down on myself. Sometimes I get super defensive. A lot of people get defensive, right? They take it personally. And that sometimes it doesn't matter what happens in the moment. It matters what happens after. Okay? I'm sorry. I was defensive. I took it personally. I took it like I wasn't good enough. Okay, I'm sorry. And I have to go back and say, I'm sorry. And if I do that, two things will end up happening. One, they see the leader saying, I'm sorry. And the leader is also going to screw things up. So I don't expect perfection. One of the questions you asked later, my biggest lesson I've ever learned, like, I am not a perfect person. So, and everybody knows it. So just stop trying. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to screw this up. Sometimes I don't want to hear the negative. I don't want to hear how I'm screwing something up. But if these are the values, then it's my job to go back and say, I'm really sorry. I blew up. I shouldn't have. I'm really sorry. And after time, I've been doing this a minute. It's not as personal to me. It doesn't hurt my feelings. This isn't about me. So I've gotten better. But when I was younger, everything was personal. Oh, they don't think I'm good enough, or I don't think I'm good enough. Oh, what if I can't get better at this? Well, people know I'm not perfect. And now I'm like, yeah, sure. I barely know anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they all know I'm not perfect. And they all know I'm trying to work on this. So when somebody says, hey, the way you were in that meeting, you took over the meeting. Well, the CEO should probably be the last person to talk, not the first. Okay, I'll remember that the next time. And I try and change my behavior. Am I 100% every meet? No.
No, and I love this. And I love how you talk about, Vera, that it's not about what happens in the moment, it's what happens after. And a lot of times we can get, because you're bang on, we can not react. We're not always going to react perfectly. And often we're going to get it wrong, and we're not going to be our best selves. And then it's, what do you do afterwards? And I think that point is so crucial to emphasize, because sometimes I find too that people, it's almost like they're embarrassed of their behavior, and then it's almost, well, I'd rather not acknowledge it, right? Like, just, it's done and it's over. And I love what you're talking about in terms of going back to someone and say, hey, I apologize. And then the impact that has on the other person in terms of what they see from you as the leader. It's
and then they'll model that, right? We model what we see. Oh, she's not perfect. She came, said, I'm sorry. Okay, if I go do that in a meeting, which I will at some point in time, then I can go say I'm sorry. And then that person who's probably leading somebody can go and do the same thing, right? We do what we see.
Yes.
My husband has this thing, again, high D. My husband is so laid back, and he'll look at me. He's like, you want to fight with me right now? I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, I don't want to fight with you right now. And I'll go, I'm sorry. Yeah, just I'm feeling anxious about something. There's something I'm wrestling with. I just needed to get this out. And he's like, yeah, not with me. Okay.
Right.
So, shouldn't have done that.
Well, and again, a other point that you made, which is so important, we learn through this practice. So rather than running from it or other things, and now we get better and better. And I also love your point about then over time, are we going to take it personally sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. And over time, the likelihood of that extreme reaction or it gets less and less. And we have this a much more balanced perspective on it. This is just awesome, because what I love about how you're approaching this, and again, I want to highlight it for everybody watching and listening, is that the thoughtfulness in terms of breaking it down, because we tend to, and in a world that's very reactive focused and leads to that, it's just taking those extra moments to say, okay, so what's going on here? What's underneath the surface? And a follow-up question that I have too is that you talked about curiosity, and I've been hearing this for the top performing executives, best-selling authors who I'm speaking with. And again, having a highly recognized organization like you do, and you're saying curiosity. What makes it such a superpower? What is making this so vitally important for us as leaders? Because some leaders that I speak with or that I hear about in some of my consulting assignments is like they almost act like they know everything, and oh, I'm descending off the mountain of knowledge that I've acquired. And you're talking about curiosity being essentially a leadership superpower. So tell us
Yeah,
more.
I think people, the older I get, the less I know.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. I look something up and I'm like, oh my God, there's been 3 new studies on this. I didn't know that. So I don't think that way at all. I believe the people closest to the thing have the best knowledge. And I'm the furthest from the thing in my business, except the strategy. Okay. So if I want to figure out why is Cydcor getting 500 calls in a week, I could read a report, right? Or I could go ask Aaron or Claudia, why are we getting these calls? What do you guys think we need to do about them? I think almost the opposite of what I did in my 30s, where I had to know the answer, which, oh, by the way, our whole society, Craig, kind of, reinforces that. So I don't think it's weird that people are that way. I just think it's it's not the truth. Right. So to me, if I'm not open to learning, I'm gonna miss something. Right? Whether that's learning about the person. I could tell myself a story and look, you see that everywhere. Oh, this person is, 34 years old, they're female, they grew up in Simi Valley, they're this way. No, that's not true. That's not true. Who is this person? Okay, so I'm very curious. What is this process? Well, I may know how the process was set up 10 years ago. I have no idea how the process is today. So I have to go ask questions. With my clients, every quarter, something may change for them. I can't assume that I know what my clients want. I have to go ask them. I have to be curious. I may have ideas. I have the network of independently owned ICLs in the field. I don't know how their business is changing. I'm not sure if we're giving them good service. I need to go find out. I need to go sit with them. I need to go watch them work. How would I know the answer? And I do think the higher level the executive, the further you are from the thing. Now, you can get close to the thing. You just got to go ask. I can't assume because my son lived with me for 20 years that now I know what his first year of work is. I have to ask him. Hey, how's it going for you? Do you like this company? What is the leadership like? Are you having any struggles? I can't give him advice without asking those questions. I can't be helpful to him. How do I even support him without asking?
Love that. And that focus on curiosity. And again, and being aware of our assumptions and how often misplaced, misguided, and outright wrong that they are.
Well, I would say this too. There's like 2 books that I think Rookie Smarts. I do not know who wrote the book, But as a leadership team, we've read that book, and it is incredible for this kind of, you know, the newest hire is going to tell you about your onboarding better than Vera Quinn, who's been here for 25 years.
Yes. Right.
And so that book embodies that. And then isn't there a statistic that all scientific discoveries happen with people under the age of 25? So then how could I think that I'm coming off this mountain of knowledge, right? Like, I would have thought of it already. I would have done the thing.
Yes. Well, and I love how you frame it in terms of just it allows us to continue to grow, and no matter how successful we are, no matter how big our organization, no matter what we feel our impact is, I just really value, Vera, how you just look at it as continuing, like, how do I learn more? How can I know more? How can I connect more? How can I just keep expanding my perspective on things? And it's interesting because I've got a question from Eric, and I love it. He said, I'm feeling really inspired by your humility. I'm going to ask an odd question. Do you see yourself as humble?
No.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I would.
No, God, no, I would never use that word to describe myself, humble. No, I think I know where I'm great.
Right.
I do. I think I know I'm a good person. Like I know that I'm a, I'm a hustler. I'm gonna make something happen. Like I have confidence in those things.
Right.
Maybe where I am humble, but again, I might have said it a little earlier. I figured out the older I get, the less I know.
Right.
So maybe in that way, I'm just very, my ego, I'm like, yeah, you better go check that. I'm not sure that you know that. You better go find that out. But humble, I mean, Eric, thank you for saying that. I don't know. I'll have to explore it. No, I know where I'm really good.
Well, it's so interesting. I love your answer. I love Eric's question. And what's really interesting, the definition of humility is that you know where you're great at, and you know where you have gaps. And I think what's interesting to me, with that as the backdrop definition, you're a beautiful illustration.
Okay, I have humility. Okay.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, and this is such a fascinating discussion, that humility sometimes is seen as have meek, or like having this kind of undervalued perspective. And I think what's really powerful is to recognize, hey, having confidence in what we do well is vitally important to propel us to be successful. And as you've shown in terms of your own journey and the organization you're building, we have maximum impact on other people. And then also recognizing, hey, I've got a whole bunch of stuff where I need assistance, and have the courage to go, yeah, I'm going to call this person or consult this resource, and I'm not tripping up on my ego about, well, I'm going to do everything. So I love this. This is such a great great discussion. I was also curious, like in your journey, what's been the most surprising thing of being a leader for you? What's been the biggest surprise?
If you give people something big to do, they will rise to the occasion. I always felt, no, they don't have the experience. They don't know. They don't, they need this before they can do this. I've always been so awed by what people can do when they put their mind to it. You give somebody the big assignment. We have a new people leader. Her name is Agnes. And I mean, yeah, just watching her, it is wild how she's taken this on, interviews with their team members. How do we make this better? Hey, how do we get our manager training better? Does everybody have a development plan? Do we have the core strengths of all our team members? And I'm like, whoa.
Right.
Stretch assignment, she's in, all in, all in. And I'm just awed by that. That's happened so many times in my career. So many times. Where these people, where you're like, hey, they don't have the experience. No, you need another 5 years. And then they just take the thing on and they explode. So that's probably my biggest surprise.
Mm. What's the biggest surprise about what you've learned about yourself, perhaps? Maybe we'll flip it around.
I struggled a lot with, am I good enough
Okay.
during my journey, right? The voice in my head was, maybe you can't get there because maybe you're just not good enough. You're not, you don't have it. You're not as polished. You're not, you, and then the more I just focused on being a student and implementing what I learned, the more I could overcome that talk track.
Mm,
So I was like, hey, people can learn anything.
right.
There are people change their circumstances, change who they are. And if you're willing to work hard enough for long enough, because if I want to be a brain surgeon, look, I don't know that, but I could do it. I may not be willing to invest 30 years, but I could do it. And once I
Mm,
started believing that people have the abilities, just how hard do you want to work? How long?
mm,
And then I started telling myself the reasons why rather than why not. You can go learn this. You can go be around somebody who can do this. They'll teach you. You can read this book. You can go get this experience. So stop that talk track doesn't serve you. Let's replace it with a different talk track.
mm. This is great. Well, we're left. I can't believe it. We're almost done. The hour has flown by, and I've got another question. I love this in terms of as we're closing down. Dasa said, "Thank you for a great conversation. Out of curiosity, what was some of your pivotal or key moments on your journey as a leader?"
Okay, so it all has to start with where I came from. I come from immigrant parents from former Yugoslavia. I think like a big message point was we came here so you guys would have a better life. So you
Mm,
will have a better life, period. And I think and that wasn't a moment, but that is a message. And that is like drummed into my head.
wow.
Okay, so it is my responsibility. It's my job. Then there's this other message. Everybody here, Canada, the US, some other countries, we won the lottery. There are certain places where you're born into, you can't get out, doesn't matter how hard you work, there is a life. Here, for the most part, this is a merit-based society.
Mm,
So then it is your responsibility by the end of the day, the debt that you pay for winning this lottery is you got to become the best version of you. Okay, so that was one. Now, when I think about moments, I think making a decision with a 6-month-old little boy as a single parent, newly divorced, moving to California, taking this massive risk, that was a pivotal moment.
mm,
3 years later, making the decision to stay when my whole family was in Toronto, that was a pivotal moment. I met my husband. And taking that risk, and I didn't think I'd ever get married again. I was like, nope. Okay, I want to have a family. I want to have this life. I want to be a great parent and partner, and creating that environment for my son. Pivotal moment. And look, they all actually impacted my leadership.
right.
When I made the decision, I'm going to go all in with Cydcor, and one day I want to lead this business. What are the skills and what do I need to learn? What do I need to do? And there were certain places in my career that I was like, you suck so bad at this. You're so terrible at this. How are you going to get better? And that the year or two of just focusing and getting better at that thing, those were pivotal moments. COVID was a really pivotal moment for me as a leader, big time, and just how I thought about the business, how we set up the business. And I would say about 10 years ago, no, 9 years ago, 2 women in our network and I went to a children's home in Belize.
Mm,
And about 2 years after I financially took over that home, that was a really pivotal moment for me as a human and as a leader.
Well, and so many comments coming through. Thank you, thank you. So inspirational. And what I love, and again, there's so much we could keep going. It's just so fantastic, and just continuing to get comments around this. What I love about what you're sharing, Vera, is that they are almost like foundational values, principles, like they are bedrock in terms of who we are, and that inform how we show up, and in particular how you've shown up. And I love how your story, personally, professionally, and then with Cydcor, how that's all come together to demonstrate how strongly that can guide us for the things that we are pursuing and having the impact that we wish. So we've only got a couple of minutes left, so this has just been awesome. Any final words? I've had a couple of questions around, hey, I'm so inspired, I'm just starting my leadership journey. Do you have any advice for those starting out in terms of what they can do? I'd love to get your take on that.
So I would say a few things. I would say number one is I believe people have greatness in them. Everybody does. It's not like it skipped 5 people and it only gave it to 1. Everybody has greatness in them. And the quicker you get to believing that, right? And the quicker you just accept that that's true, the quicker you'll find it. So I think that's like a big piece of it. And whatever your definition of greatness is, not my definition of greatness, but it's in there. It's in all of us. So that's one. Number 2, I have read the same book for 24 years every July. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I highly recommend the book. And 24 years, like clockwork, January. And every time I read the book, I pick up something new, just something different resonates with me. This year it was Sharpen the Saw. Okay, right. I'm like, this chapter is speaking to me for 2024. How do I get sharper? How do I get better? How do I make sure? Maybe because I turned 52, right? I was like, oh, you're 50. So, hey, what are you doing? Mentally, physical, spiritual, social, emotional. So from a leadership perspective of yourself and others, that book to me is like a bedrock.
Love it. Well, and I have to say, it's so interesting because when you were speaking about everybody has greatness within them, I love how you just linked it to the 7 habits, because I had Stephen Stephen Covey's son, on the podcast a little while ago. And so it's interesting how all these things come together, and that was exactly that point. And I love that, how you're framing about we have greatness within ourselves. The people around us have greatness within them. How do we create the conditions to unlock that greatness? Like such a perfect mic drop close to the podcast, I have to say. So before I send it to you for final words, Vera, just for those of you who are listening in a couple of weeks' time, have another amazing guest coming on. Really excited. Best-selling author Kim Scott is going to join us. May have heard of her book, amazing book, Radical Candor. Her latest is Radical Respect, and she'll be joining us for a live conversation on June 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. So before we close, Vera, thank you so much. This has been thought-provoking, inspirational, incredibly valuable in terms of powerful and practical tools, tips, techniques we can use. Any final words before we close today?
No, Craig, I would just say it was really fun. You are great, and I appreciate everybody's questions. I hope there was something of value for everybody listening.
Well, I can, from the comments in the live audience, absolutely. And for me, I just thank you for perfectly encapsulating when I launched the Do Good to Lead Well podcast. It was really about how can we have a positive impact on ourselves, our teams, our communities. And thank you for providing such a thoughtful and important answer for that question. So until next time, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Bye for now.